was watching a documentary on Helen Keller. If you don't know who she is, she was born blind and deaf. And for the first few years of her life, she just lived in a silent, dark world. Before her teacher, Anne Sullivan, could start teaching her a lot of things, she took her out into the woods and out into nature and had her just use the senses that she did have, her sense of touch and smell, and touch the trees and the leaves and the ground and the flowers, and it just completely changed her life. She said later on in her life that those first few years were just so fundamental for her, and it just opened her world up. Are you loading up your things to go for a hike? Perfect. Yeah, you'll need your water bottle. We are going for a hike today. We want to get back into hiking. Like, we have not really been hiking very much lately. We used to hike regularly all the time, and I really want to get back into that. Now that Floyd is older now, so he can walk more, and he's really into like exploring. It's going to be so much more fun. So we're going to try to hike to the top of a really epic viewpoint today. I don't want to butcher the name of this hike. I'll write it right here, but it's like Tzuhlum. Probably going to be some dogs on the trail. You can see some puppies. Maybe some squirrels.
Go outside.
Get some fresh air. Find some sunbeams. Can you hear a dog? Yeah. You want to get out? Okay. So there are a bunch of trails here. We're going to go look at the sign to see, because we want to hike to the top. You want to see more dogs? I think there'll be lots of dogs. Yeah, we're going to go read the sign right here.
Is that fun? What are you doing? You wanna walk a little bit? Because this is the like Duncan side, and then there's the ocean on the other side. I always wonder how vehicles end up in the middle of the woods. I have no idea. Like, there's no roads. It's barely like a little thin hiking trail.
was a grind, as Chad would say. That was so hard for me. I had like moments of envisioning just sitting down and giving up, but I really wanted to make it to the top because it's been so long since we climbed a mountain. The real test, I think, might be, yeah, we're up. We thought that Floyd might walk a little bit. None. He didn't want to walk at all. He loved being carried. But the carrier that we have just doesn't work for this anymore. We need like one of those hiking carriers. So we'll definitely have to switch up our gear a little bit, but that's okay. So right behind Chad, right there used to be a big cross. That's why the trail is called the Cross Trail. But they took it out because it kept getting vandalized. Just last night, I was watching a documentary on Helen Keller. If you don't know who she is, she was born blind and deaf. And for the first few years of her life, she just lived in a silent, dark world. And she struggled a lot until she was a few years old, I think it was. And her teacher, Anne Sullivan, came along and taught her how to read and write by doing like writing in the palm of her hand. She ended up growing up and becoming extremely successful. She wrote tons of books and literature, and she thrived in the world. But before her teacher, Anne Sullivan, could start teaching her a lot of things, she took her out into the woods and out into nature and had her just use the senses that she did have, her sense of touch and smell, and touch the trees and the leaves and the ground and the flowers. And it just completely changed her life. She said later on in her life that those first few years were just so fundamental for her, and it just opened her world up and to so much more possibility than she ever knew before. And it's so hard. While we're walking, the two senses we use the most are sight and sound. I hear the birds, I hear the water, I hear everything, and I'm looking where I'm going and looking at all the flora and the fauna, and I just can't imagine being in the woods with only my sense of smell and touch. It's just such a humbling way of looking at nature. And I just like kind of want to take a minute to close my eyes and just use those two senses.
Don't run, Floyd.
If that's at all possible with a toddler.
As we walked back to the car, I let the quiet come over me. Floyd fell asleep on Chad's back, so we gently flipped him around to sleep on his chest. It was so sweet. It was just a beautiful, peaceful way to end our big hike day.